Well, the best concerts never start on time, right? You always got to wait a few minutes for the band to come on stage. Led Zeppelin was famously late. I can't remember the last concert I went to that started at the actual listed show time. So if the Panther-Lair show starts a minute late, Voodoo IPA, as you're yelling at me, hmm, they've got something weird going on. I have playback that. Let me see. All right, this might work. Hold on. Something's a little strange. See if this works because now I'm actually hearing myself, but on like a delay. Oh, I know what the problem is. Okay. Sorry about that for the technical goof. Um, kind of rushing around and it's far too complicated for me to explain. It's not worth any of our time for me to explain why I was hearing myself on like a 90-second delay, which is very disorienting when you're talking and all of a sudden there's another voice going on. I mean, look, I'm used to hearing at least my own voice in my head talking to me throughout the day, correcting me on various missteps and mistakes. But when I'm talking to you on this show and all of a sudden I start hearing my own voice 90 seconds later, it's pretty weird. So anyway, Voodoo IPA was yelling at me, let's go Peak, because we started 60 seconds later than 8:30. So I apologize for that, but we are here now for the live Panther-Lair show, as we are every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. You know the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. The most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. Everything you need right there. Panther-Lair.com. And of course, right here on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you want to be a commenter during the show, I think you have to be a subscriber to the YouTube channel. I think that's usually the setting that I try to turn on, and maybe I forgot. And so all you non-subscribers will get away with joining the conversation tonight. But hopefully you'll just do me a solid and click the subscribe button. It doesn't really ask a whole lot from you. It's pretty easy to do. It's no commitment. You just make me feel better because our numbers go up. So do that, and then you'll never miss any of our video content here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. The daily morning Pitt videos, Monday through Friday, these live shows on Wednesday nights, post-practice interviews, highlights, recruit interviews, all kinds of stuff. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And once a week on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, we bring our good friend Jim Hammett in. And Jim, things got really weird there for a little bit. I was like talking. I was right in the middle of yelling at Voodoo Peak for yelling, or Voodoo IPA for yelling at me. And then just as I started to yell at them, I heard my own voice in my head starting off the show. And it was really disorienting. I'm not going to explain how it happened. I figured it out. Thank God. That could have been really bad. But how's your night going, Jim?
I'm not hearing voices, so I guess that's pretty good.
That's a success. Okay, this is funny. I mean, I don't know how funny it is. It was a long time ago. The first radio show I ever did in Pittsburgh got an hour on Saturday mornings on Fox Sports Radio 970, right? And so it's the first one I'm ever doing. I think it was right before the Sun Bowl in 2008. And so like it's the first show. I don't know if I don't think I ate the night before. I was like so nervous about this. I barely slept, and I get in there and I'm like, oh God, it was like 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and nobody's listening anyway, except for like 15 people from the site tuned in, because I kept like advertising it there, because I don't even know if there was Twitter to advertise on at that point. So I get in there, I'm so like, I'm nervous. I'm like, oh my God, I have my own radio show. What am I going to do? And so I sit down and like the show starts, and I'm like, I've got all this stuff printed out, written out. Like, I don't want to say I wrote a script, but I kind of did. So I start talking, and I'm like, okay, this is good. Like, I don't hear my voice in my headphones, but that's okay. Like I'm doing it. The guy's not making any weird faces. The producer, everything's going well. And then all of a sudden, like 7 seconds into it, I start hearing myself, because radio is on a 7-second delay, right? Because they have the dump button. If you say a swear word, they can hit the dump button. So it's a 7-second delay. And somehow my headphones were getting like the 7-second delay feed. And I'm like, well, this is really weird. What is going on here? Why am I hearing my voice? I'm like, well, let's go to the phones, because somebody called in. This is all in the first segment. I'm like, okay, go ahead, caller. We sit there. Nothing happens. And I'm like, what's going on here? And the guy goes, hey, Chris, thanks for taking my call. How's it going? I'm like, oh, good. I was still hearing the delay. And so my wife later was listening. She's like, I was like, why aren't you talking to this guy? Why are you in this? And it just kept going downhill from there. I might have actually like muttered a swear word on the air, like just one of those, like put my head on the microphone, like, oh God, because it was just a total disaster. The producer's like, just go to break. And so he goes to break, and one of the other producers happened to be listening. He calls in and he's like, here's the problem. They push the button and it all got fixed after that. But it was like, that was my, like first radio show. And it was just an abject disaster where I think I actually committed an FCC violation by swearing on the air, muttering it to myself, like, I don't want to say the word here because we run a family program, but anyway, that was a trip down memory lane. It was funny. What I also remember from that is, as I was talking about the Sun Bowl, my whole like premise was, it doesn't matter what happens in this game. They already won 9 games this season. They had a big year. Like, this game is going to have no impact on our perception of the season or what we think of the 2008 season. And then they went out and lost it 3-0. And I'm like, you guys had to find a way to make it impact the perception.
The most memorable game of that entire season.
I don't know about that. They beat Notre Dame in like 4 overtimes. So that was a pretty memorable game. They also lost the Bowling Green. That was a pretty memorable game too. They also beat West Virginia with the game-winning drive. Matt Cavanaugh's like crowning achievement. He handed the ball off 12 times in a row. I think LaRod had 1 carry, and the other 11 were all LaShawn McCoy. And it was the greatest drive that Matt Cavanaugh ever called. So there are plenty of memorable games from that season. What are you talking about?
I don't know. I think people will always remember 3-0.
Yes, that's true. Well, that season always stands. Like that one in the year before. Often when I get into conversations with people about sort of like the, most recent memory, how that sort of dictates and dominates your perception of things. Like 2007 was, by all accounts, I mean, a disaster of a season, but you come out of 2007 after the 13-9 game and everybody's excited. I don't, were you like 12 or 13 in that offseason? I forget. How old were you at that point in 2007, Jim?
16.
Ooh, 16. Okay. So I don't know if you remember the offseason that followed that, but it was it was rainbows and unicorns. It was sunshine. It was great, even though they were 5-7. And everybody was like convinced, like, oh, it's going to be so good, though. They're going to have Bill Stahl back. And when they finally get Bill Stahl, they are going to crush. Of course, they go out and lose to Bowling Green. But then they win 9 games in the regular season. But because they lost that Sun Bowl and because Bill Stahl was coming back again, the whole perception after the 2008 season was, oh God, what a disaster. They're going to be terrible. This is going to be an awful season. Bill Stahl sucks. I don't want to have him playing anymore. And obviously they go out and have a great season in 2009. But like 2008 was, by all measure or count, I mean, it was a success. I mean, they blew 2 games they should have won with Bowling Green and Rutgers. I mean, not to mention the Sun Bowl. I mean, that should have been like a 10 or 11 win team, but like it was a great year. They won 9 games. But everybody had such a negative perception of it because of the Sun Bowl. And, sometimes that last game can really, change the perception or sort of set the tone for the offseason. And maybe, I don't know, are we in that a little bit with this most recent Sun Bowl? What's the tone or perception of this offseason, Jim?
See, it's different because you look at last year and they lost the Peach Bowl, but everyone's still kind of just like, Kenny didn't play. That was a great year anyway. But this year they won the Sun Bowl. They won, 5 games to end the year, and everyone's like, okay, it was a pretty good, end of the season. It was kind of a little murky at the middle of the year with 4-4 record, but yeah, you win the Sun Bowl, you finish top 25, and that's kind of the message around the program. It's like, hey, we finished in the top 25 2 years in a row. So yeah, sometimes that last game does kind of leave a little bit more of an impact.
Yeah. I wonder if, I think the fans are into it. Like, I think the fans feel good momentum. Maybe I'm just reading our boards too much, where, with the recruiting stuff through June, where they had all these guys on campus. And then, there were 6 guys who committed, right? Between Coy Beasley on June 28th and then Malachi Williams on July 8th. So it's about like a 10-day stretch, and they all committed to schools other than Pitt. It was 6 guys. And so it seems like there's a perception, at least on the Panther-Lair.com message boards, that the momentum has been sapped, or they hit a wall or something like that. And I've argued against it a lot of times. But do you think that's just sort of reflective of just June, that they didn't get more of the 4-star guys? Or is that a bigger offseason tone that the fans have right now?
I think we talked about it a little bit last week, and we said if you switch the third week and the first week, and if that all would have happened at the end, you're feeling pretty good about everything. So I think it's just kind of how it played out with some visits, and I mean, by all accounts, it's still a really good recruiting class. I think they had a really productive June. I think they landed some good players. I think they put themselves in position to add more players, and I mean, like we said last week, if signing days tomorrow, this is the best class Narduzzi's ever put together. So, I mean, I can understand being frustrated about, missing out on Malachi Williams and Nicholas Marsh and Coy Beasley. I mean, those are, ones you want to win, but at the same time, I still think there's a little silver lining there as well.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, especially, I'm sure you've seen that I've posted the stat a bunch of times. They have 14 4-stars on campus. This is more than they've ever had. I mean, the last 4 years when they've had June official visits, they've had a total of 21 4-stars visit. That was kind of where the rankings ended up. I don't think Davis Bevel was a 4-star when he visited, but just comparing the numbers, I mean, this kind of numbers they've never had. And so part of it is when you have that many guys visit, you're not going to get them all. And so there's going to be more guys who go away. But I don't know. I don't know how people don't see that as a sign of progress, even just getting the guys on campus. I know you got to close, you got to get the commitments, but I mean, you got to get them to visit first. You're not going to have a very good chance of landing the commitments if those guys don't visit in the first place. And I don't know. It's recruiting. I mean, I think, like you said, and like we talked about last week, I mean, the timing of things it could have gone differently if you even alternated committing to Pitt and committing elsewhere. But we still think Yassine Willis is out there, right? We still think Sincere Edwards is out there, which puts them up to, if those guys do end up announcing for Pitt, would put them at 5 4-stars in the class. We'll see if Day Farmer hangs on. But I mean, I think it's hard to feel like June was anything less than a success. Moving now into July, coaching staff on vacation for the most part. I mean, no recruiting visits. It's a dead period. I think the coaches each spend about 1 week in the month of July in the office, breaking down tape and that kind of thing. Anything in particular you're watching this month? I mean, I guess we're just watching a few of these commitments and waiting for a few guys to announce, right?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned those two, and I think Ryan Howerton's going to commit this weekend to somewhere, and Zamarian Lang is a little bit later in the month, and I guess everyone's still kind of waiting on Trevor Jackson to see what he's going to do, but obviously he had some bigger offers come along. I think Oklahoma offered him last night, so that one's probably going to drag out. But I think at this point, you're just you're gearing up for the season. You're kind of putting the finishing touches on June. Then, at a certain point, they're probably going to start reevaluating and see what else they need to add and work on, to finish the class.
Ryan Howerton, 4-star offensive lineman. You mentioned him. What his commitments this weekend? Is that right? Is it Saturday?
I think it's Saturday.
Okay. They've got 5 offensive linemen committed. He's a 4-star. You don't want to turn down a guy with that kind of ranking. And I'm not saying Pitt will even be in a position to turn down or accept it. I don't know where he's leaning. Is 6 offensive linemen too, even in a bigger recruiting class like this one's going to be, or already is 6 too many to take in this class?
I mean, it does feel like too many, but I mean, you can justify it, I guess. I mean, because I think, there's a lot of positions where they're almost over recruiting. We've talked about that before where, they might add more commitments now, knowing that they might not sign all of them in December. So, I mean, I don't know if they're going to turn down Ryan Howerton. I know everyone on our message board right now is angry whenever I suggest that, they might be at capacity with 5 offensive linemen, but but we don't know which way he's leaning. And it's unique with Howerton because whenever they first started recruiting him, I think Pitt was his only Power 5 offer for a while. I don't think he even got to 3-star status till like the winter. And whenever I was like, yeah, he might be a guy like they end up with and people are going to be upset with. Like they're like, he wasn't like this highly rated recruit. Then he got his 4-star in June, and all of a sudden he's this very highly coveted recruit all of a sudden. So it's funny how, you watch recruiting go, and, early on in the process, I was thinking like Howerton might be a guy they end up with and a guy that Pitt fans might not be happy with. And it really changed in like a month's time.
Yeah, now if they miss on him, it'll be a continued sign of the lacking momentum and how they've, recruiting has fizzled out and et cetera, et cetera. there's a question that came in here. I mean, there's a lot of different things we can talk about, but I kind of want to go to Jack's question just because it's something I've talked about a bunch this week, and people on the boards have been talking about. There's been a lot of conversation about. Jack says, I'll start us off. Anyone else see absolutely no downside in taking Julian Duggar, whether or not we get Trevor Jackson? If we get both, the 2026 quarterback room would be Diefenbach, Jackson, Duggar, a 2025 quarterback, and a 2026 quarterback. First of all, I don't think they would get both. I don't think they're going to take both. I don't think they're going to try and take Trevor Jackson and Julian Duggar. I think if they were to get Trevor Jackson, they would probably not push any further or harder for Julian Duggar, the Penn Hills quarterback. But to the first point of no downside in taking Duggar, and I think we did talk about this in previous weeks. I've talked about it a bunch. I absolutely agree. I mean, I just don't see much downside in taking him. I don't think there's a need to push for him right now. But if that's the quarterback if that's who ends up being the quarterback in Pitt's 2024 class, I don't think that's a bad thing. And, sort of along, like he said, I don't see much downside. He's a good enough athlete to play another position if for some reason quarterback doesn't work out. And there's a lot of quarterbacks I would not say that about. I'm not sure Trevor Jackson would play another position or could play another position in college. But Julian Duggar, he's got a video on Twitter dunking a basketball. He's 6'3". He's a big kid. He's a big athlete. He can run and he can throw the ball really well. I'm selling myself more and more on it, especially after seeing him in person on Sunday. But I don't see the downside. I don't think it'll be a bad thing if they end up taking him.
I'm still not quite sold on him. I'm not sure if if they miss out on Trevor Jackson. I don't know if Duggar's exactly where I would go. I mean, I think they could probably scour the ranks a little bit and find some other options. So I don't know if it should be, if they miss on Jackson, they absolutely have to take Duggar. I mean, I think they should do their due diligence and see what else is out there. But I mean, there is something to be said for he worked out in front of the coaches and they seem to like what what he did in that kind of setting. So I'm still skeptical of him because there really isn't a lot of, what are his other offers? Toledo and UMass right now?
Stony Brook, Fordham, Holy Cross offered today, I want to say. So the list is growing.
Yeah, I'm still a little iffy on him overall. I mean, I get that he's a good athlete, and I think it's obviously good pub to, bring in a WPIAL player. I mean, it's not often you have the chance to even bring in a WPIAL quarterback. I mean, they have one right now, but it took a while for him to get here. But I don't know. I mean, I get that he's a good athlete. I know he's a really good basketball player, and I think Penn Hills has a really good basketball team, and he could probably land somewhere else on the team and help out. So I get both sides of it, but I mean, if I would still want to shop around a little bit for a quarterback if I were the Pitt coaches.
Did you know I put this stat out there? He attempted 130 passes, according to the Post-Gazette website. Rodney Gallagher threw more passes last season. And I mean, like, Rodney Gallagher, to my mind, was the epitome of like a wildcat quarterback. I mean, he threw 167, I think, according to the Post-Gazette's website. So I kind of feel like Penn Hills might need to throw it a little bit more. I thought Cam Sadler was coaching there for a while, so maybe they need to get Cam back. I know Cam would throw the ball, so I think they
He's
maybe
a wide receiver. He wants the ball thrown.
Right. When you've got a 6'3" quarterback who can throw the ball the way Duggar can, I think if you only throw the ball 130 times, that's something of malpractice. I mean, they probably should use him a little bit more. And that's probably, I mean, I think there are a lot of factors contributing to his low recruitment. That might be one of them. I think being a lefty doesn't help. On Sunday at the camp, when I saw him in person, he started throwing, and another guy who was there sort of doing some evaluations walked up to me and said, "So I see Julian Duggar still hasn't learned to throw with the proper hand yet." And I'm like, geez, here we go. But then he just started dropping dimes all over the place. And that same guy was like, okay, that was a great throw. So I don't know. We'll see. Ryan wants to know Derek Davis's outlook for this season. You wrote about the running backs 2 weeks ago, Jim. What do you think Derek Davis is going to do for Pitt this year?
Yeah, I actually, in my 3-2-1 column a couple weeks ago, my prediction was that he's going to make an impact. I think he can help out. I mean, there's certain players, whenever you kind of walk around the facility and you see guys, and like Derek Davis is a dude. Like, he's a big guy. Like, he kind of has that like same body type as Izzy. I mean, he's really chiseled. He looks like $1 million as a running back. So, I mean, I think it's going to take a little bit of time to, really make an impact. But I think as the season goes on and you need more running backs, you need more guys to carry the ball, I think he can help out.
Yeah, I wonder, like, so I mean, it's tough. I mean, Israel Abanikanda, right? You're going to give him the ball 200 and some odd times. I mean, does Rodney Hammond merit that workload, or do you think it's more spread this year than it was, last year? Does it look closer to kind of the spread they had maybe in 21, at least percentage wise, of how the carries were kind of divvied up? I mean, it's not going to be like 2021 where they throw the ball 600 times. But in terms of percentage and spreading it around, do you think it'll be more of an even split than one guy gets 65, 75% of the carries?
I go back and forth with that because there are a lot of people that are convinced that Rodney Hammond is the better, straight ahead running back as opposed to Izzy. I mean, they just like kind of that, like carry the ball, give him the ball 25 times a game. There was definitely early in the season last year, there was a belief that was the thing. So, I mean, it kind of depends how it all goes. I mean, I think they have a good offensive line. I think Rodney Hammond's a good player, and I think if you give him the ball a lot, he'll produce. But I mean, there's probably a chance where you're going to want to get Sebo the ball a little bit more because he has a little more breakaway speed, and I think Derek Davis is just going to be able to push the issue a little bit and get some carries too.
Yeah, Sebo is my sleeper. I think he might have. I think he could surprise a little bit. We got a super chatter here. He's RJC Man 38, regular super chatter. Always has something to say. Frank Signetti. This is his question. I should put it in quotes here. He says Frank Signetti represents a consistent issue under Pat Narduzzi not being able to retain offensive stability. Last year, the quarterback controversy will likely be an issue this season too. Nard dog, our guy, not best.
Where's the question?
I don't know. Maybe it was coming after that. But I can't really say. I don't know. Frank Signetti represents a consistent issue. I mean, he's been here for a year. I don't think. Look, I would say that I don't know if he handled the situation the best way possible last year. I don't know if he called the best offense for Kedon Slovis, and I don't know if Kedon Slovis was the best quarterback for his offense. I think there were things he probably could have done differently. I think there are usage things you can look at with Konate Mumfield and Gavin Bartholomew compared to prior success that they had and say, doesn't seem like they were used that way in Pitt's offense last season. But at the same time, despite a number of obstacles, some self-created and some not, he still had an offense that won 9 games or was a contributing factor in 9 wins, and a running back who broke a bunch of records and, if they still gave it to running backs, could have been an ACC Player of the Year candidate. Recruiting is another thing altogether. I'm willing to see how Signetti does in year 2, how he adapts the offense. He's got a quarterback who should fit it better, does the whole, and he's going to have his work cut out for him with the receivers and kind of the state of the receivers and the state of the tight end. So if the question, and I mean, we'll just guess here, unless he added any more. No, he didn't. The question, if it's a question of evaluating Signetti, I mean, that's what I would say. I think this year is going to tell a lot of that story. I mean, look, reality is Mark Whipple wasn't very good in 2019 either. That offense sucked. That offense cost them the Boston College and Miami games. Those are 2 games where they give up 26, I think, to Boston College and like 16 to Miami. If you lose games when you give up less than 20 points, it's your offense. Your offense blew it. And that was Whipple's first year. Now, he didn't necessarily get all that much better in 2020, but Kenny Pickett getting hurt had something to do with it. I'm willing to see what Signetti can do in year 2 to see if it gets any better.
I mean, I am too. I mean, even through the struggles last year, there was still a 1,400-yard back and a 1,000-yard receiver on the team. I mean, I think he was able to highlight the best players he had. I think the question, I think we're probably going to get into it a little bit, is, do they have enough weapons to kind of make that offense work this year?
Yeah, that's a $1 million question. And yeah, like you said, we are going to get into it. So the last 2 weeks, it's been kind of a bummer sometimes writing about the positions, because last week I wrote about the receivers and this week I wrote about the tight ends. And it's, we're doing this series, in case people don't know, Monday, we're doing a different position each week. Monday, we do 5 questions about the position. Tuesday is, comings and goings, who left the roster, who joined the roster. Wednesday is the depth chart. Thursday is the 5 best players at that position under Narduzzi, and Friday is a bold prediction. And then kind of along with that, I've been doing every Wednesday morning Pitt is just breaking down that position. And so today was the tight end one, and it got dark because good Lord. I mean, like you have basically under Narduzzi, you have 2015, JP Holtz and Scott Orndorff. That was good. 2016, Orndorff might have been the leading receiver on the team in 2016. He was a great player in Matt Canada's offense. Oh, I'm sorry. He was the second leading receiver on the team that year. He had 35 catches, which kind of speaks to what that offense was like. But after that, 2017, 18, 19, 20, I mean, miserable numbers where, 2017, the tight ends as a group caught 34 passes. 2018, can you guess? I'll let you guess. How many passes did the tight ends in 2018 catch? Pick a number. Pick the most ridiculous number you can think of.
18.
7.
Ooh.
7 passes. Will Gragg caught 5 and Tyler Sear caught 2. 2019, Nakia Griffin-Stewart and Will Gragg combined for 38 catches. 2020, you want to take a guess on this one? 2020, Daniel Marega, Kai Wright, Lucas Krull, and Kmar Mims all caught passes from the tight end position. How many did they combine to catch? Again, pick the most ridiculous number you can imagine.
6.
Oh, you got better that time. It was 9. They caught 9 passes. Between Orndorff and 16, in 2016, Orndorff caught 5 touchdowns. And then in 2021, Krull and Bartholomew had 10 touchdowns between them. In the 1, 2, 3, 4 intervening years, the tight ends caught 1, 2, 3 touchdown passes. I mean, like, it's almost worse than you could imagine. You know what I mean? Like, it's worse than I don't even know how to say it. I mean, like, you could write the worst possible contributions from tight ends, and Pitt actually, I think, has been worse than that. And then they have this breakout freshman in 21 and Gavin Bartholomew, and he actually, his production goes down. Last year, he gets 7 more targets and catches 7 fewer passes. He catches half as many touchdowns, and he has fewer yards. If you were going to rank the positions on this team this year, 1 through 10, tight end is number 10? Is tight end the last one?
I mean, I think it, yeah. I mean, I don't know where else you would go with it. I mean, I think there's a world where Gavin Bartholomew, can be a productive player on this team this year. But beyond that, I really don't know. I mean, I think Carter Johnson's more of a fullback, H-back. The 2 freshmen, Renda and Mitchell, have never played. I think they're sophomores by now. I mean, so you really don't know. I mean, Epps is kind of a wild card. Maybe he comes in and does some Lucas Krull type things because he's a big athlete. But again, I'm not really convinced of that. So, I mean, I think of the whole team. And, I mean, wide receiver's not that much ahead. I would say that. But, yeah, the tight end's probably number 10.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like those 2 are probably the bottom 2, right? Receiver and tight end. There isn't, like, any other position I think of, I feel better about any other position. Even quarterback. Do you feel better about quarterback than receiver entering this season?
I think so. I mean, I think Phil and Cignetti are they're going to figure it out and kind of get to that point where they were comfortable with each other in 2020. And I think there's a scheme fit, at least with Dracovic in this offense. But again, with the receivers, I mean, we talked about it before. Last week was wide receiver week. 6 of their 10 scholarship receivers are freshmen. So, yeah, you just don't know what you're really getting there. I mean, I think there's a few talent. Like, I think Bub Means can be a really good – I mean, he's a great athlete. I think Mountfield had a really good season whenever he was at Akron, but didn't see a ton of it last year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the people heard it. You said Cignetti and Dracovic, they're going to figure it out. Quote, they're going to figure it out. I might make that the name of this podcast for this week. Podcast. Quote, they're going to figure it out. So, from your what's that saying? From your lips to God's ears, or something like that.
I guess.
All right, so that's the bottom half. Would those would be the bottom 3 positions, or would you put something else below quarterback in terms of your optimism, positive, good vibes about?
I'm questioning the safeties, but I'm also optimistic that they'll be good by the end of the year. I think it might be shaky at the beginning, but I think there's a lot of talent in that room with McIntyre and O'Brien and Stephon Hall and Donovan McMillan. I think they could piece together a good starting. I mean, Brandon Hill and Eric Hallett were really good.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot to replace, and for two brand new starters. So I think it might kind of be, they might have a Western Michigan type game, but by the end of the year, they'll have a Wake Forest type game.
Right. Yeah, that's really good, Jim. Did you just come up with that?
Off the cuff.
That is good. Write that one down. Jeez. Never mind. They're going to figure it out. Let's go with that Western Michigan Wake Forest. That's a hot number right there. Yeah, I do feel like with the safeties, I'm at that point where I'm just sort of assuming they're going to be fine because of the staff and their recruiting and their coaching and their development. They've sort of earned that extra benefit of the doubt. So then let's go up to the positive side, though. Let's look at number one. Corner? Is cornerback your number one position on this team?
I think I'd probably go corner. Because I think there's a couple guys with pro potential there, and there's a lot of experience. And, MJ Devonshire, I think, is going to have a really big breakout year. Marquez Williams is as solid as they come. And, AJ Williams would start on a lot of Pitt teams, and he's their number 3 corner. So I think you have to feel pretty good about that spot.
What's next then? Linebacker? I feel like I'm pretty high on this group of linebackers. Do you put them number 2? Are they right behind the corners, or is there somebody else you would put there?
I might go offensive line.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I was just gonna say that before. I was just gonna be like, or would you go O-line? That O-line group is talented. They're talented. They're experienced. I think there's multiple NFL players in there. I think Gonsalves is an NFL player. I think Ryan Baer is an NFL player. Yeah, back and forth. I don't know, linebacker or O-line. I really like the O-line. I really like the linebackers though. Kamara and DeShields. They don't have as much depth. Maybe that's a difference. The O-line, I think, probably has a little bit more depth than the linebackers. But so those would be 2 and 3 in some order.
Yeah, I would say so. You have to feel pretty good about, I would say, defensive tackle, just because you have like the trio there, the Green, Bentley, Danielson, that have been here since the Paul Christ era by this point. and there's obviously some upside guys there. Sean Fitzsimmons, a guy they're really excited about. Elliot Donald's still waiting to break through. Isaiah Neal's a pretty talented freshman. So I think you have to feel at least pretty good about defensive tackle.
Now I'm kind of curious now, since you made a joke about them being there forever, of how many guys played in both Sun Bowls. Well, actually, no, they probably didn't play in that 2018 Sun Bowl. They were on the roster. Nick Patty was on the roster. I'm going back to the 2018 recruiting class now. Haba Baldonado was on the roster. Eric Hallett was on the roster in 2018. Green, Marquez Williams was on the roster. Danielson, Zabovic, Jake Cradle. There's a lot of guys who made double Sun Bowl appearances, actually. I wonder how many guys actually played, though. There might not have been many who actually played in both games. We should look that up. We should have written about that. Why didn't we write about that last December? Noah probably wrote about it. Noah Hiles. He would come up with something like that.
Yeah, he would. He digs deep.
He does. You know who else digs deep, Jim?
Chris Gates.
Chris Gates digs deep. Chris Gates, everybody knows about Chris Gates at this point. The Panther-Lair Live Show, of course, is sponsored by Chris Gates Fitness. And as you probably know, Chris is an online fitness coach from Pittsburgh. He's a huge Pitt fan, and he's planning something really cool in August. Chris is launching his one-on-one online fitness training camp on August 7th. That's just 26 days away. I'm going to trust his math on that, but it's less than 4 weeks. I know that math checks out. And it's your opportunity to get your own customized, personalized training and nutrition program to reach your health and fitness goals. You'll work with Chris to create a program tailored to you. And Chris will be there every step of the way to guide and support you through the process. When you join Chris's training camp, you'll have the opportunity to participate in monthly challenges that help you build healthy habits. And Chris will pick winners each month to receive free workout supplements, home gym equipment, and more. Just like how Pitt shows up to training camp on the South Side to start getting in shape and build their game plan for the season, you'll work with Chris to map out a strategy that helps you make progress during a time of year when people tend to see their health and fitness go in the wrong direction. Football season, tailgating, road trips, the holidays, and more make fall a really challenging time to take steps forward. But by signing up for Chris's training camp, you'll commit to enjoying all those aspects of fall in a way that supports your goals. In fact, a bunch of Panther-Lair listeners signed up for Chris's coaching program last fall and saw amazing results. People who signed up lost a combined 120 pounds on the scale and 34 inches off their waistline. But it's not all about losing weight. These folks jumped into their own custom strength training programs and added quite literally hundreds of pounds to their pressing, squatting, rowing, and other lifts. In fact, a handful of people who signed up last year are still working with Chris today because they enjoy the process and are continuing to find ways to make progress and set even higher goals for their health and fitness. This program is not only about losing body fat or building muscle, it's about combining all of these things into one program that pushes you in the right direction and helps you establish healthy, sustainable habits that serve you well for a lifetime. So don't forget that date. Chris Gates Fitness Training Camp opens on August 7th. Panther-Lair listeners get 75% off their first month of coaching, and that discount doesn't apply to anybody else, so it's a great opportunity to take advantage of. Stay tuned to the podcast for more details and visit chrisgatesfitness.com to learn more. You know what would be a good sales pitch for Chris, Jim? I was just thinking about this as I was talking. Have we had the conversation before about which position groups could you beat in a race? Did we have this talk?
Yeah, I think so.
I forget if we've talked about it on the podcast or off the air, but I mean, it's been an ongoing discussion among media members for years. But that would be like a good sales pitch for Chris. Like, you know, you could beat the D tackles now, but upgrade to like the offensive guards, you know, or you could beat the guards in a race, upgrade to the offensive or the defensive tackles. You know what I mean? Like, do you want to beat a defensive tackle in a race? Like, do Chris Gates's fall thing? Like, reach the people in terms that they understand. You know, maybe people out there are not interested in squatting or pressing, but they would like to beat Devin Danielson in a race so he doesn't hit them with his helmet. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. I'll have to send that to Chris, see if he wants to
we could workshop
use that as marketing. Yeah, I think there's some options there. All right, let's get into some of the more comments and questions. We were talking about momentum and that kind of thing. Wolf HD says, I think the biggest problem with the summer recruiting is that the fan base saw the momentum and expected to see a great class, while Pitt just landed a good recruiting class, better class than the usual Pitt class, but not quite what people expected with the momentum and talent interested. My first reaction is I disagree. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I still think it's better than the usual. I mean, look, it's going to be hard for Pitt to ever finish in the top 15 of the Rivals rankings. It's going to be tough. There's not a lot of WPIAL 4-stars, and you know, historically through the years, Pitt gets most of their 4-star recruits locally. So, you know, if they miss out on Anthony Speck and Quentin Martin, it's going to be a tough hill to climb to get back up there. So, I mean, I think what we saw this year is that they brought in more 4-stars, so they're starting to swim in these waters. So it's going to take time, and it's going to take more winning. But I mean, there's definitely an upward trajectory here. It's hard to deny that.
Yeah, and these 4-stars we're talking about, I mean, there were 4 weekends in June, and these guys had plenty of schools to choose from for those 4 weekends, and 14 of them chose Pitt as an option. Now, I know you want them to you want them to commit, you want them to be on the roster and all that stuff, but I mean, it's a step in the right direction. I have a hard time seeing it as anything but that. And I think when you look at the class as it's coming together, I mean, there's really good players in this class. I mean, I think they are recruiting at a higher level. I think it's always going to be a moving target, right? Unless you have the number 1 class in the country, you always could be doing better. And so I don't know if it would ever live up to fans' expectations. And, you know, to tie back to themes that we've talked about a bunch of times, there is the timing thing. And just like when we talked about with the Sun Bowl and creating the tone for the offseason, I mean, you know, if they got Cameron Lindsay and Jasir Whittington and, Day Farmer all to commit on June 30th, we'd probably feel different about this class right now. But I don't know. There's also a long time to go until signing day. There could be recruiting bumps. There could be decommitments. They could be new commitments. I think Narduzzi, what was the stat I found? 6 out of his 8 full recruiting classes, he's gotten a 4-star in like the last month of the cycle. So, you know, there's always those kind of things that could bump out there. Rashad Battle, DeMar Hamlin. I know Keyshawn Camp wasn't a 4-star, but I mean, guys like Michael Salahuddin popped up late. AJ Davis popped up late. There's always, you know, more that can be added, and it's sort of become a Pitt specialty to do so. So, I mean, there's a lot of time to go. I think they've done really well so far. And, I think there's still less than 6 months until signing day. Jack says not to overanalyze the social media account of a 17-year-old, which I would agree with you, Jack. That's not a good idea. You should not read too much into it. But he says Ryan the Mountain Howerton tweeted, "Is this home?" with a graphic of him in a Pitt jersey with the words, "This is home" behind him. Yeah, he tweeted that yesterday, Jim. And I'm pretty sure today he had a similar type of graphic for West Virginia. Did you see that?
Yeah.
So what's tomorrow? Who else is on his list? Maryland or something?
Maryland, Virginia Tech, and Howard. So the next couple of days we'll see something from one of them.
I mean, count it down, right? Today was Wednesday. Maryland, Virginia Tech, and Howard. So we'll get one on Thursday, one on Friday, one on Saturday, and then we'll commit. I mean, this is all planned out. These kids are playing chess, and the rest of us are playing checkers here. Jack should realize this, that, social media strategy. You need to have a good social media strategy, and Ryan the Mountain Howerton should be Ryan Howard. It'd be easier to say for me because, just Ryan Howard from the Phillies, Ryan Howard from The Office, be a lot easier. But anyway, it seems pretty clear that this is planned. We should take bets. What are you guessing for tomorrow? Is it Maryland, Virginia Tech, or Howard?
I'm going to go Howard.
Howard? Ooh, going left field. I like that. I'm going to... Maryland was the first one that came to mind. So I'll go with Maryland. We'll be sure to quote tweet it at each other tomorrow when he tweets it. Let's see. Jack, following up, he asked the question earlier about Julian Duggar, says he's high on Duggar, but that might be because as a kid, I once watched a lefty Pitt quarterback drop 5 touchdowns at Notre Dame and swear on national television. That's true. And it's funny. I think Pitt fans are probably more accepting of a left-handed quarterback because they had 5 years of Rod Rutherford and Tyler Palko, and those were 5 pretty, for the most part, pretty good years of quarterback play at Pitt. Tyler struggled or suffered through the Matt Cavanaugh years like the rest of us did, but it was, pretty good years of quarterback play at Pitt. I do think that there are college coaches who, unless you are Tim Tebow, rule out a left-handed quarterback almost out of sight, like almost offhand, just cancel him out. I think there's a lot that goes into formation. I mean, I think for some offensive coordinators, it's completely creating a mirror image of how they want to run their offenses, that they have to set the formations to different sides, set the protections to different side. People have asked about whether you need to put your best tackle at right tackle now. I don't know if you need to do that, but I could see with as detailed and as these guys get that it could really change things. And, maybe you don't even want the hassle of okay, well, I got this left-handed quarterback. We set up all our protections to go that way. And then he gets hurt, or we got to bring in the other guy and it's a right-handed quarterback. Now we have to flip everything and go opposite. I mean, it seemed a little bit silly to me initially, but I've had enough people tell me that college coaches actually do think that way, that maybe that's part of it too. And then I started trying to think of left-handed quarterbacks. And I mean, who is there? I mean, Pitt obviously had Rutherford and Palko, but I mean, who are some other current left-handed quarterbacks? Who comes to mind for you? Who's a current left-handed quarterback in the NFL? Don't Google it. I'm Googling it, but don't you Google it.
No one's coming to mind. To go to the left-handed quarterback point. I remember a game wherever Michael Vick started for the Steelers and the receivers were complaining the ball came out weird, not how they're used to. So I mean, I guess the whole thing, the left-hand quarterback thing, gets in everyone's head.
Yeah, Tua's left-handed. Did you know this?
Now that you say it.
Now I'm going to have to read more because on the Wikipedia, it says he's right-handed outside of football. And it has a link to an article called How Alabama Quarterback Tua Became Left-Handed. How do you become left-handed? Tim Tebow, Pat White, Matt Leinart was left-handed.
Yeah.
Jared Lorenzen, Chris Sims, Michael Vick, like you said, Mark Brunell, Todd Marinovich, Steve Young. But I mean, we're now back into 1980s, 1990s.
Didn't Todd Marinovich also he was trained to be left-handed? They chose that for some reason?
Probably. I mean, everything about him was weird, so that wouldn't be a surprise. But yeah, I mean, this is how far back we have to go. Cade McNown, yeah. So there's not a lot. There's just not a lot of guys who have done it and done it successfully and made careers out of it. But, oh well. Let's scroll down and see what else here. Josh Newark says, I don't think tight ends need to be viewed as a negative. I think we all look at Bartholomew as a legit talent. It's all either scheme or quarterback's not looking his way if tight ends this year don't produce. But the thing about the quarterback not looking his way, though, as we pointed out, he had 7 more targets last season than he had the year before. I think part of it is usage, and I think part of it is scheme. And it's weird because Frank Zanetti has been good about using tight ends in the past. I mean, he did well at Pitt with tight ends. I think they did pretty well at least one of his years at Boston College, right? Who's the tight end they had up there?
Hunter Long was pretty
Hunter
good.
Long, right. And so it's not like he doesn't know how to use tight ends, but for whatever reason, it just didn't happen last year. It didn't come together. And I don't know if that's scheme. Maybe it is Keaton Slovis. He targeted him a lot, but didn't throw him good passes. I don't know. I still think he's a talented guy, right? I mean, I don't think, like, did last year cause you to lose any confidence in Gavin Bartholomew?
No, I mean, I still think he could be a good tight end. I do think it goes back a little bit to he never was a tight end in high school. So when he came to Pitt, they found a spot for him, like kind of that H-back, fullback type thing, and just kind of work with him. So last year was the first time he's ever been the line up, hand in the dirt, straight ahead tight end. That was the first time he's ever done it in his life. So,
yeah.
And he had a quarterback that was probably not used to having a tight end in his offense. And I think there was just like a little bit of both going on there.
Yeah, that's actually funny because then you can look at like Malcolm Epps and his numbers at USC, where he never. I think I added up actually what the tight ends caught at USC last year under Lincoln Riley. And it was like a total of like 12 passes or something like that, or like maybe even less. It might have been like 7 passes that the tight ends caught in that offense. It just wasn't a primary focus. And so, that's, I mean, Keaton Slovis wasn't coming from Lincoln Riley's offense, but, USC even before that wasn't exactly loading up on throwing to the tight ends. And so, yeah, maybe it was a little bit new for Slovis. Do you think you keep pushing Bartholomew into that inline role? Or do you just adjust and move him back into the backfield, fullback, even slot, different things like that?
I think you can move him around. I think you can, because we've talked before, I don't know who else is going to do it if he doesn't. That's kind of the other thing with kind of where they are with the tight ends. So I know you don't want to view the tight ends as negative, Josh Newark, but there's reason to.
Yeah, it's I mean, like, we can all be optimistic about Bartholomew, but I have no idea what to expect from Malcolm Epps. I don't really know what Carter Johnson is. And Jake Renda has never played a snap on offense, and Cole Mitchell has never played a snap at all. So, and that's all of them, unless I don't think I forgot anybody. So I don't really know where a lot of optimism can come from. RJC Man says, what grade do you give Narduzzi on offense in his tenure? Defense, give him an A, special teams B-, offense D. That's my grade. Well, I would say, I mean, I'll take this first. I think a D is too low. I mean, he has twice set the Pitt record for scoring in a season, average points per game. He did it in 2016. He did that in 2021. So his offenses have been 2 of the highest scoring offenses in school history. He's produced a Heisman Trophy finalist quarterback. He's produced a Biletnikoff Award winner. He's produced, multiple 1,000-yard rushers, including 2 in the same season. And he won a conference championship with offense. So I understand that the offense has been inconsistent. It's been a revolving door at coordinator. But I can't give it a D. I mean, like, there are too many highs. Yeah, there's definitely some lows with the offense. 2019, like we mentioned, quite frankly, this past season, there have been a lot of lows with the offense, but the highs have been so high that, I mean, I don't think I can go less than a B on offense. I mean, if we're going to average it all out. That's just me. I don't know. Are you closer to a D on that one?
No, I'm kind of more in the B range. I mean, you have the school's all-time leading passer played all of his games under Pat Narduzzi. Like Tyler Boyd, like all-time leading receiver, played a year for Narduzzi. I mean, you had a couple, like you said, a couple 1,000-yard backs. So I get like the 2017 season wasn't very good. I get the 2018 season didn't really have much of a passing game. 2019, Whipple didn't really do a great job, but for the most, I mean, they've had some really good years, and the 2 of the best offenses in school history are 2021 and 2016.
Yeah. I it's probably one of those things that deserves more nuance and context rather than just giving it one grade for 8 years, because so many different things have happened. But if you have to give it one grade for 8 years, well, I think the grade has to be pretty positive. So I was trying to just, as you were talking, I was trying to calculate 1,000-yard rushers. Is it so Olsen in 15, Connor in 16, Hall and Olsen in 18, and then Izzy in 22? So 5 in 8 years?
Mm-hmm.
Did I miss anything in there? No, because they wouldn't have had one in the Whipple years. So, okay. So 5 in 8 years. I mean, granted, it really happened in 4 seasons, but I mean, that seems pretty good. And Boyd, I don't think Boyd had 1,000 yards in 15.
Yeah, I think he was a little short.
Yeah, but he caught like 91 passes. But Addison obviously had a 1,000-yard season. Wayne had a 1,000-yard season. Maurice French set the record for receptions in a season, and then Addison broke it 2 years later. What other high watermarks? We mentioned, Heisman Trophy, Biletnikoff, Izzy led the nation in rushing touchdowns. I mean, they've had some remarkable, defense has obviously been the better of the two. Although it's kind of, I guess if you think about the defense's low points during Narduzzi, it was 2016, right? That was the nadir of it because they just got the ball thrown all over on them. So it was really just one really bad year as opposed to multiple bad years like they've had on offense. But defense as a whole, though, I would have to agree is an A, because even though they had one bad year, they were pretty good for the 7 out of the other, the other 7 out of the 8, right?
Yeah, that 2019 team that was the best defense they had, like statistically. And if they had any semblance of an offense whatsoever, they probably win 9-10 games. They were that good defensively. And there's always a little element to their defense of like bend don't break. Like they do give up big plays. I always call them a big play defense. They give up some big plays, but they make big plays. So
yeah. Yeah, I remember one time being bored at like a mid-season one year, a couple years ago, and trying to like add up like all the sacks and all the touchdowns allowed of 20 yards or more or something to see which one there was more. Because I felt like, so many times it was either a sack or like a deep pass. And I feel like the numbers were actually pretty close. They were actually fairly similar on what they gave up there. All right, let's get to a few more here before we run out of time. Alex Fernandez says 86 might be the best receiving talent on the team next year. Need more of a concerted effort to get the ball to him. Is Gavin Bartholomew the best receiving talent on the team, Jim?
I think Mumfield probably has the best hands, and I think like Means probably has like the most upside of being like a really, really good receiver. I think Gavin Bartholomew, if he can put it all together, I think he has a lot of tools. I don't know if I would go into this season saying he's the best receiving talent on the team, though.
Yeah, it seems like a bit much for me, at least. Ryan points out Michael Penix, the Washington quarterback, is left-handed. So they're coming out of the woodwork now, although Jack brings the data that 10% of the world is left-handed, so they'll be underrepresented in the prominent quarterback list. Fine. I don't know. I just watched Julian Duggar throw the ball really well. RJ Seaman 38 thinks we're ignoring the fact that Pitt has had, what is it now, 5 offensive coordinators in 8 years. I don't think we've ignored that
I think we talk about it like every week.
I mentioned it a lot. I actually just brought it up on the message boards today that I think that's part of what has held back quarterback recruiting to some extent, or at least getting early quarterback commitments for Narduzzi, is they haven't had the kind of continuity. Jim Chaney is gone after 1 year. Like, what's he going to get for the 2017 recruiting class? He's not going to get an early commitment for that because he's gone before the before the 2016 season. Matt Canada gets Kenny Pickett, but he wasn't going to get an early commitment for the 2018 class because he was gone. Sean Watson even. I guess Watson got he got Nick Patty and Bevel, right? He got Davis Bevel, but I don't know if they're I don't think he really had. I'd have to look back and see when Bevel committed. Bevel might have been an early commitment, but there's a case where a guy was around for 2 years as offensive coordinator, which I think can have a. Oh no, Bevel was a June commitment.
He was a June.
Yeah, he was part of that first big June official visit. So, I think you need some continuity. And then the one time they had a guy for like 3 years, he didn't really recruit. So, although he might have gotten, did he get Nate Yarnell early? How about that? Give me that one. Mark Whipple got Nate Yarnell. I think he got him in like April of 2020. I want to say, as the world was shutting down, Nate Yarnell was committing to Pitt. But so, I think that's held them back. I think the lack of continuity on offense has held them back at times. I think there have been a couple of just subpar hires along the way, and I think it's hurt their recruiting as well. So I don't think it's an issue we ignore. If you want to get into why the coordinators keep changing, I don't know. There's probably a lot of reasons for that. I think Jim Chaney always wanted to get back to the SEC. I think Matt Canada got offered a giant pile of cash by LSU. I think he straight up fired Sean Watson and was pretty much effectively doing that with Mark Whipple as well. So I don't know. Is there anything to read into it? I mean, is there anything more to say about it than that?
No, I mean, I think those first two hires weren't bad. They left for the SEC right away.
Yeah, that's not that weird. Yeah, John Waffle is a super chatter and is happy that Pitt is not West Virginia. I would not disagree about that. We've seen a lot of nonsense here following the University of Pittsburgh athletic programs, but West Virginia is in it right now, and Northwestern too. How do you I don't even know what you do at this point in the calendar year. If it's July, particularly for a football team. I saw they announced that the Northwestern staff is going to be retained. Did they name an interim from it?
So the new defensive coordinator, who was the defensive coordinator at North Dakota State, is now the head coach, and the staff is being retained. So that is what they're going to roll with this year. But they don't really have a choice. That is what it is.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, you couldn't go out and hire someone right now. I mean, maybe, a year from now, I guess, or not a year from now, 6 months from now, or even maybe less. Well, I guess, I mean, your ideal hire would not be someone who gets fired and they're available to be your coach. You could hire them in November. So you're going to wait. And it seems like Dave Clawson's name keeps coming up. Mike Elko's name keeps coming up.
Yeah. I mean, they could also go for guys currently unemployed, one Paul Chryst, maybe.
Paul Chryst. His name comes up a lot. I don't know.
Madison's not that far away from Evanston.
I feel like Paul, if he just holds out one more year, he'll get his shot to come back to Pittsburgh. So the offensive coordinator here, which is what this offense needs, right? It needs more Paul Chryst. Let's see. Jack agrees with you, calls Pitt's defense bend don't break with a tendency to give up the home run ball, but sack 200 quarterbacks in 4 years. Yeah. I mean, that's how they play. They're aggressive. I don't think you would ever accuse Pat Narduzzi of playing it safe. Particularly on defense, he's very. I don't know if he's always a risk taker on offense, but on defense, he is very much a risk taker back there.
I think he said a couple weeks ago, this defense, at any point could potentially give up 500 yards in a given game. There's always that chance, and it's very real.
Yeah, if you have a competent quarterback, that could happen at any point. At least a right-handed quarterback. I don't know if a lefty could do it to him or not, but I guess we'll see what Michael. Now I'm gonna have to go and look and see how many left-handed quarterbacks they played against. They never played against Tua, and they haven't played against Michael Penix. But that'll be my research for tonight, is to find out how many left-handed quarterbacks they played against. All right, well, we've got. What do we have tomorrow? I had the mailbag on the mailbag edition of the Morning Pit tomorrow morning, so that's something to look forward to. We got more tight end coverage. Jim, you are breaking down, is it wide receivers in the 2025 class, or are you up to tight ends? What position are you up to tomorrow?
I think I'm doing wide receivers. I'm still breaking down the schedule and early look at that. So it's your typical counting down to the season type stuff.
That's good. That's good. We always look forward to it, and it's always fun. But thanks, everybody who chimed in tonight and hung out tonight. All the comments and questions, super chatters. We appreciate you guys. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, to never miss anything we do. And then head over to Panther-Lair.com. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for all the Pitt sports coverage. Football, basketball, and recruiting. It's all right there, and message boards to talk to other Pitt fans. So thanks for hanging out tonight. Thank you, Jim, for spending an hour with us, and we will catch up with you guys next week.